So, on my ever continuing quest to create the perfect method for how to install shoes into a Spider Man costume, we take yet another step up in the process, taking, shall we say, a more professional method. We're starting to enter the territory where things are far more complicated. If you haven't already, on this channel, I've previously covered how to install pre existing soles into your suit and how to install Kung Fu shoes into your suit. Now I'm teaching you a simpler version of what they did for the Sam Raimi Spider-Man suits. Um, this is what I would say is one step below professional grade shoe installation. Um, if you haven't seen the previous videos, I actually would recommend checking them out. I normally don't do this sort of thing of being like, hey, check out the previous videos. Uh, but for this, I would, or at least kind of skim them because this builds upon a lot of what's in those videos. Not necessarily in steps, but definitely in skills kind of acquired through doing both processes. Before we get started, here's the list of supplies you will need. You're going to need a 3D printer. Doesn't have to be a big one. The smaller end ones should work for this. You're going to need TPU filament in your color of choice. A Tafwa shoe or like a Muslim like temple shoe or some sort of other slip-on shoe that doesn't have a sole. You're going to need contact cement. You'll also need an STL file for the sole itself. The only person I'm aware of that has one of these for sale is Sensational, and it is bundled with his sewing pattern for an inner boot for Spider-Man cosplay. We won't be sewing that inner boot, but we do need the actual sole file. Also, super glue. Preferably, you're going to want one with a brush. And that should be everything that you need for this process. The first step is going to be to measure the bottom of your foot. Your shoe size will work 2, probably, if you can't be bothered to do that. But shoe size isn't always like 1-to-1 to what you need for a sole, if that makes sense. So it really just works best for this process to measure the bottom of your foot because you basically want the sole to end where your foot ends, right? We're not doing like an actual shoe. So, like I said, if you can't be bothered to like pull out a tape measure and actually measure your heel to big toe or whatever, you probably could just use your shoe size to scale the sole. But that's what I did is I measured my foot itself. Once you have your shoe size or the size of your foot, you're going to need to adjust the size of the sole in whatever 3D printing program you're using. I use Kira. And then give it a print. To start with this kind of test print, you don't really necessarily, I would print one first to make sure you got everything so that it lines up with your inner boot and your foot and everything. So for this one, you can just print it in PLA if you want. Don't bother wasting the TPU filament. Once it's done, like I said, line it up with your temple shoe to kind of make sure that it fits accordingly and that there's no overhang or underhang, and you're good to go. Step 3, obviously, actually print your TPU. Actually print your sole out in the TPU. Step 4, now that your soles are kind of good to go, it's time to prep the actual suit. I found the easiest way to do this if you don't have any shoe lats is to just put your kind of inner shoe or your temple shoe or whatever, your inner boot on, and then put the boots of your suit on. Then you're going to make a cut down the center of the bottom of the boot, stretch that so that the fabric of the bottom of the boot matches up with the inner boot that you got going on or inner shoe. Then take your super glue and kind of glue around the edge on the bottom of your two. So you kind of sandwich them together. So you want to glue the bottom of the fabric boot to the bottom. You want to glue the top you get it. Step 5 is once that fabric has been glued to the bottom of the inner boot, given time to set, it is actually time to attach the soles. Basically the same process as I've shown kind of off before, but now we're using contact cement, so it's a lot better. Now you can, if you want to, you can opt to wearing the suit during this process if you wanted. I'm not sure how it'll matter. If you have, like I said, shoe lats that are already in there, you're gonna be good to go. You might choose just not to at all. Kind of up to you. For me, I opted to just wear it because contact cement does adhere pretty quick. So I wasn't too worried about having to kind of sit there in the suit. And you don't have to rubber band it to your feet with contact cement. So what you're gonna do, if you've never used contact cement before, A, well-ventilated area, B, mask. Brush contact cement on either side. So bottom of your suit, top of the sole, I guess technically would be the top of the sole. You gotta wait a few minutes and then you just press them together. If you're gonna be wearing the suit like I was, after you kind of do the initial press, what I did is I decided to kind of just stand up for a bit and kind of, flux my kind of pressure on it to kind of really get those two pieces kind of cemented. So that's what I did. The TPU sole is flexible, but it's not that flexible unless you're going to adjust the thickness of the actual file. I did not. That's definitely a thing that you can maybe do and thin out the sole. I don't know if you'd want to do that though. But either way, it is still flexible, but it does have some rigidity to it. And that top bit that you are gluing to the bottom of your suit is a bit porous. So for me, I felt like that was the most effective way to ensure that there was a good bond between the two. Step 6.5 is basically just a double check that you didn't miss any spots. If you did, you can either use like super glue to kind of tack them down or repeat kind of the previous step. This step is where I'd give them like a stress test. So I'd move, kind of jump, see what comes apart, if anything, and then kind of fix accordingly. So yeah. And then that's it. That's how you make and attach 3 printed soles to your Spider-Man costume. I can't really speak to how comfortable or sturdy they are, as I haven't really been able to test them out. I wore this suit for 2 hours at a convention, and they felt pretty good. I didn't really have any crazy wear or tear on them. I didn't feel like I was slipping around much. So I don't know. As of writing this, I don't know whether I don't know. I don't know sort of how good they really are. Like I said, they're more or less comfortable for me. If I was going to do a sort of version 2.0, what I would probably do is either go over the sole with a couple layers of like Plasti Dip or Flex Seal to add like a rubber coating for kind of grip and a little bit more of like a spongy sort of comfort factor, and then maybe try and fit a thin kind of insole, some sort of thin insole into the shoes. For now though, that's really all I can kind of say about them. Like I said, I wore them for about 2 hours at a con, kind of moving and jumping, and they held together, and they didn't feel particularly uncomfortable, but again, I was only wearing them for like 2 hours. If you guys want to see more how-tos, including, like I said, the sort of final evolution of this series, or this process of actually castings, molding soles and casting them and all that, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the notifications so you don't miss it when it comes out. If you've tried this method before, let me know what you thought down below. I would love to kind of see what other people think of this method. I know I'm not the only person who's done it. There's another Spider-Man cosplayer that I was actually talking to after I shared on Instagram that I did this, and they were like, ooh, I don't know about that. And we kind of were sharing back and forth our kind of different experiences with it, and we're both kind of also now going to be taking that step into actually molding and casting rubber soles next. But yeah, so I would love to know if any of you guys have done this, kind of what your thoughts on it, what your experience with it is, because like I said, I don't have too much with it. But until next time, stay frosty, true believers.